Stuart, this is the weekend before your epic court case. A lot of people are confused exactly what it is you're going to court for. Is it criminal charges, appeals? Could you explain in layman terms what's going on as from Monday?
Well, we don't know yet how long the hearing will take in this week coming up, but it is scheduled for possibly 5 days, which is very long for a directions hearing. A directions hearing is when the court sits to decide how the case it's going to hear is going to be structured, and basic initial procedural questions and rulings on law. It's quite understandable that the general public can have easily lost track of what is going on here, because all of these different legal cases can appear so complex, and the actual basic core reality that underpins them is easy to get lost, of course, and that problem is compounded by the failure of Jersey's mainstream media to report these things properly. I mean, essentially, the core of this case is this. I, as a politician, was exposing wrongdoing, crimes and examples of incompetence by Jersey's public authorities, and those had traditionally been covered up for many years and indeed decades.
Allegedly?
No, not allegedly. This is an evidenced fact. It's proven. Right? There are many examples of cover-up: child abuse, incompetence in the hospital, all kinds of issues. And I began, of course, using the internet as an independent journalist a few years ago, and this effectively became a huge threat to the Jersey authorities, because they essentially are in league with Jersey's local media. So, of course, these problems, these cover-ups, never really got reported before. Suddenly, they had lost control of the situation. We had citizens' media, social networking, people like me able to discover the truth and expose it. They had to crush me. They had to do something to stop the truth emerging. So they mounted this unlawful police raid on me, which they conducted without a search warrant. On that basis alone, plainly it's illegal. You'd have to be foolish not to see that. What they've conducted against me under the data protection law is a malicious prosecution, quite clearly, based on case law. It's a prosecution undertaken by authorities in order to oppress somebody, to stop that person exposing the truth, exposing wrongdoing, or for some other reasons to oppress them.
So I suppose the question to be has got to be, how is your court case going to remedy any of this?
Well, hopefully it's going to remedy these matters on a number of different levels, although, of course, it takes a lot of time. People like me and others, supporters and other members of the public, have had to make a lot of deep personal sacrifices to fight this fight. But essentially, when we look at the entire edifice of public administration in Jersey, the judiciary, the prosecution system, the politicians, the senior civil servants, most of the local media, it's a single edifice, basically. It closes ranks, it protects itself. There are no effective checks and balances. There is no part of the apparatus that's actually making sure the rest of it is working properly and to the public interest and in the public good. And we've got to basically fix that problem. That's the core problem. We've got to make sure that Jersey modifies its public administration and that it gets effective checks and balances. Can that be done within Jersey? No, it can't. We're dealing with a self-protecting edifice. The last thing any of it is going to do is allow itself to be changed, to become accountable, which is why actually in an ironic sense, in the big scheme of things, it's quite advantageous that these court cases, these oppressions are being conducted against me, because it gives me the opportunity to take the case to higher political levels, ultimately outside of Jersey to London, and ultimately to the European Court of Human Rights at Strasbourg. And I've always been of the view, in fact, that Jersey is never going to get cleaned up until we succeeded in forcing London to fulfil its legal duties to ensure good governance and the proper rule of law and the good administration of justice in Jersey.
Fine. And do you think, do you see this court case as a springboard, basically, to your end game, to cleaning up Jersey? Is that going to come from this court case?
Well, I certainly hope so. I'm certainly going to give it my best shot, so to speak. Well, some people may remember that in early 2009, John Hemming MP and I attempted to have a judicial review mounted against the UK Justice Secretary in the Royal Courts of Justice in London for his failure to ensure the proper rule of law and good governance in Jersey. We were unsuccessful on that occasion. The UK judges said that effectively, if we wished to challenge what we considered to be a failure of the UK Justice Secretary, we would have to do so through the courts in Jersey. Now, that was quite a strange judgment in many respects, suggesting that a UK minister isn't justiciable in a UK court under UK law. But nevertheless, that having been the decision, I'm now going to be initiating in the coming couple of weeks an action exactly of that kind here in Jersey. As a part of my legal action, I'm going to be asking the court in Jersey to determine whether the UK Justice Secretary is justiciable in a Jersey court for his failures to ensure good governance and the proper rule of law in Jersey. And if, of course, the Jersey court says, no, that aspect of your application doesn't work, you can't sue the UK Justice Secretary in a Jersey court, then that clears the way for a further unarguable ground for seeking a judicial review against him in the Royal Courts of Justice in London, because the UK Justice Secretary is a public authority and all public authorities are answerable to the law. He must be justiciable in a court somewhere. Jersey, London, it has to be one or the other. It can't be neither. So that's another big step, one part of the long-term strategy of this long-term battle to enforce the proper rule of law on authority in Jersey.
Well, because hopefully Team Voice will be reporting on this extensively over the coming weeks of your court case. A lot of precedents are going to be set, aren't they, by this? A lot of rulings that Judge Pitchers is going to make during this court case is going to set precedents.
Oh, indeed, yes, without a doubt. Of course, obviously, if the decisions of the Commissioner don't chime with what I and my advisors consider to be the right way, then all those decisions will be appealed. For example, a couple of the initial legal arguments I am making are to the effect that the current monopoly for Jersey lawyers to practice in Jersey courts, so that I or you can't employ an English barrister to represent us in the Jersey courts, I'm arguing that that's unlawful and that's counter to our human rights. I'm also arguing, perhaps more significantly, that the nature of the jurat system in Jersey is not actually capable of properly fulfilling the requirements of being an impartial and objective tribunal, which is a strict requirement under the European Convention on Human Rights. There's so few of them. There are only 12 jurats. They know all of these establishment people, the law officers, politicians, the judges. It isn't possible to draw from such a narrow grouping of 12 people, who themselves are drawn exclusively from the narrow ranks of the island's traditional rentier elites. These people can't be looked upon as being capable of forming an objective and impartial tribunal, especially not in the case of somebody like me who has been opposed to this system for many, many years. So I'm arguing that if the jurats have to sit on my case, then that law is wrong and it's not compliant with the requirements of the European Convention on Human Rights.
Okay. Do you believe the evidence and case law you'll be bringing to this case, this trial, is going to be successful? Do you think you're going to win?
Well, let's be quite clear about this. Believing that I'm right and that we have the evidence and that we have the case law thoroughly on our side is not the same thing as believing that I'm going to win, at least not in Jersey. Do I believe that we have the evidence to prove these issues? Yes, without question. Not only in terms of these broad legal principles I've been describing, but even down to the actual detail of the allegations against me, for example, and the fact that the issue that I exposed, dating back to 1999, was in fact an act of gross incompetence at best by Jersey's public authorities. All of the evidence is there. Also, all of the case law that proves the requirements upon public authorities, such as those in Jersey, to act lawfully and objectively. Likewise, all of that is established absolutely in English case law. It's not arguable. Also, at a higher level, the jurisprudence that comes out of the European Court of Human Rights about things like a fair trial, rights to free speech, right to be protected from the excessive and arbitrary abuse of powers by authorities. Again, all of that is already rock solidly established. So in the kind of legal cases we're taking forward, we're not actually seeking to establish a new case law or to set new precedents. The law, certainly at that national and ECHR level, is already on our side. The trick, of course, is getting the Court of First Instance here in Jersey to accept that its habits and customs have been wrong and are not compliant with that higher law, which is why this has to be, I think, a long battle.
So the case starts Monday the 14th of March, day after tomorrow, and will be going on for how long?
That's difficult to say. I mean, the Commissioner did set aside 5 days for the directions hearing. It may consume those 5 days, but on the other hand, since that schedule was fixed, there have been certain issues, for example, the amount of time it's taken to research the matters. I mean, I don't have legal representation, for example. I haven't been provided with effective legal representation, so I'm having to do a huge amount of work myself. And it hasn't proven necessarily possible to do all of that within an appropriate time. You know, there are other issues too, so it's possible certainly that the other side, the Crown side, might ask for an adjournment at an early stage next week. I couldn't say for certain yet quite how long this coming week is going to go on, but certainly it's going to be, I think, the beginning, at least, of an interesting and important process. There are many examples of absolute illegality by Jersey's public authorities, which, if we were a proper law-abiding society, the public authorities would have been prosecuted for those things. In the United Kingdom, local governments, government departments, ministers, they get prosecuted when their departments, when their public authorities break the law. That doesn't ever happen in Jersey, and it doesn't happen because at root the problem is we have a politicised prosecution system. The law officers department, which decides whether it's going to prosecute states departments, is the very same department, the same set of people who advise legally those various public departments on what they've been doing.
Yeah.
We don't have a neutral, effective prosecution system in Jersey, and that is, if you like, the core problem in this. We need to change the system so we have an impartial and non-conflicted Director of Public Prosecutions who, when government departments, when states departments get it wrong, he will prosecute them. At the moment, we don't have that, to the great detriment of the public good.
That's okay. So can we hopefully get an interview with you, or a series of interviews during the court case?
Absolutely. I mean, plainly, and I'm not just saying this; it's there to be seen from past, even recent experiences. Even when I do try to speak to the local media, the resultant reporting is simply such a comically biased and incomplete churning of propaganda that there simply isn't point in speaking to the mainstream media. And so, yeah, I mean, absolutely, I'm happy to speak to citizens' media, yeah.
Thank you very much, and we'll be keeping a close eye.
Thank you.